In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Vlogs. That time of year again. So last year, I did a video. My top 10 most anticipated Big Finish releases of 2020. Like it said on the tin, I looked at the future of the upcoming year and counted down the top 10 titles I was most excited for. I would like to keep that a yearly tradition, so here we are again, my top 10 most anticipated Big Finish releases of 2021. Before we begin, there are a couple ground rules I'd like to go over, cover my bases, and explain what's going on. So first of all, everything presented is my own opinion. There are titles not on this list that you may be excited for. There are things on this list you may feel differently about. That's all fine. I encourage difference of opinion. That's what my comment section is for. I think I said that already. And secondly, the format of this video is going to be a little different. If you're familiar with some of my friends' channels, Jacob Licklider, Brian Corrigan, Briarheart02, or Joey Morgan, Security Kitchen Productions, you've seen them do very podcasty type videos. They present simply a static image and have their thoughts in voiceover over it, or several images. That's how I'm going to be doing it this time around. Simply for scheduling and time convenience. The end of the year for me is always kind of a nightmare in terms of free time and such. So it's just easier to record voiceover and then edit an image over that voiceover. It's easier to find the time. I can do it in segments. I don't have to do everything in one sitting. And yeah, it's just easier on me. I think that's everything. Let me make sure, because I have a list of things I want to talk about. Oh, right. That's the big one. Last thing. This list is presented on everything we have information on at the moment. So, for example, not for example. So, there are things coming out next year that Big Finish has not announced. Obviously, because we don't know what those are, we can't talk about them. I can't know if I'm excited for them or not. So like I said, this is based on information we already have. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we begin the list properly, however, there's a couple runner-ups I'd like to give shout-outs to. These are titles I'm merely curious about. Not enough to be excited or anything, though, however. But I still thought they deserved some attention. So, first off, we have The War Doctor Begins, Forged in Fire, a new series following on the continued adventures of the War Doctor. As the title indicates, the focus of this series is a much younger War Doctor just after his regeneration in The Night of the Doctor, as opposed to the centuries-old incarnation at the end of his life played by the late Sir John Hurt. Earlier this year, Big Finish released a teaser clip of this series, and Jonathan Carley sounds amazing as the War Doctor. The vocal likeness is uncanny. However, as I said, I'm just kinda curious about this series, not enough to actually really want it, at least not right now. I find myself more interested in this set's premise, focusing on a younger War Doctor. And I wonder if this will help my issues with this particular incarnation. I'm not the biggest fan of the War Doctor's characterization. Future Doctors, and the War Doctor himself for that matter, see the War Doctor as a monster. The War Doctor exists to do things no other Doctor would dare to do. Unfortunately, as I said, that's been let down by the War Doctor's characterization. He is in the same place the Eighth Doctor was when he regenerated. But my assumption is the War Doctor, as we saw him up to this point, was a tired old man. He'd fought the Time War for centuries, and he'd reached the point where he was fed up. He was done. I wonder if a younger version, however, will be closer to what he's supposed to be. The other big selling point for me personally is that this is the Big Finish debut of Ohila, which, side note, I've just learned I've been saying wrong. Because we never actually heard her name said in the series, I always thought it was Olia. But no, it's Ohila. Anyway, Ohila, for those of you unfamiliar, is the current matriarch of the Sisterhood of Karn. She made her debut helping the Eighth Doctor regenerate in The Night of the Doctor. She later appeared in Series 9, cameoing in The Magician's Apprentice, and later she had a much larger role as the tertiary antagonist in Hell-Bent. Despite her limited screen time, I actually really like Ohila, so I am really excited to see more of her. The other runner-up I want to give some attention to is the Doomsday Contract. The Lost Stories range has had an interesting run. They were originally concluded in 2013, simply by nature of they'd all been found, or the ones they could realistically produce had been found. Between you and me, given how many Lost Stories some of the shorter runs have had, I refuse to believe the Mega is the only Lost Story from the Third Doctor era. There's gotta be more, right? Right? Anyway, getting back to the point, the Lost Stories range originally concluded in 2013. Then, it was briefly revived last year to bring back 2 more Lost Stories, and they will be doing it again next year. And both of these will be Fourth Doctor Lost Stories. The Doomsday Contract looks to be a Lost Story from Tom's penultimate season, Season 17, and features him and Lalla Ward as Romana Dvoratrelundar. This story was originally written by John Lloyd and will be adapted for audio by Nev Fountain. That immediately makes me happy. I've said it before, Nev Fountain is my personal favorite Doctor Who writer. I actually did some research into the Doomsday Contract, looking into it and its history. And the history of the Doomsday Contract was that writer and producer John Lloyd was a close personal friend of Douglas Adams. Adams asked Lloyd to write this story for Season 17. However, John Lloyd himself was a TV producer at the time, and when the script entered the rewrite phase, Lloyd had to drop out because of commitments to other projects. So, with Lloyd's permission, Adams had another writer, or other writers, do the rewrites, but the story was ultimately dropped because after Season 17, Adams left the series. And if you read the plot summary, the Doomsday Contract is very Douglas Adams era. You know, the Earth has been deemed insignificant, devoid of intelligent life, so a corporation is going to bulldoze it for a development project. Sound familiar? And the Doctor finds himself in a trial as the Earth's defense. But I have to say, hype is why this story only made runner-up for me. As I said, we're getting 2 Fourth Doctor stories next year, and Big Finish shifted all of their attention to the other one, kinda leaving this one by the wayside. And I do have to admit, I did board the hype train. Also, spoilers, that Lost Story will be on this list. Now with that out of the way, we can begin the list proper, starting with number 10. Windcliff. At the time of recording this, an official cover has not been revealed, so I'm using a promotional image instead. Windcliff will be the next miniseries in the Dark Shadows range. It is also the only non-Doctor Who related title on this list. I'm very apprehensive about this one. Looking at the promotional image for this miniseries, I'm sure you've seen it. Windcliff was originally slated for a 2020 release. When the pandemic hit, though, Big Finish announced in March that Windcliff would be delayed until 2021. And that's why it's number 10. Because yes, I'm excited for it, even though we still know nothing about it at this point. But there is a very strong possibility that this will happen again and it will be delayed. You know, for example, Bloodlust was released in 2015. The follow-up, Bloodline, was supposed to be released the following year. Unfortunately, it was delayed until 2019. So I'm taking this news with a grain of salt, because if I'm being honest, I expect, at the very least, Windcliff to be delayed one more time. Number 9. The End of the Beginning. One of the announcements Big Finish made is that they will be discontinuing the main range, or the monthly adventures. I think it's mostly a cost-cutting measure myself, but who knows what's going on. And the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctor adventures will continue in a new format. As such, the end of the beginning will be the final release of the main range. I have no idea what to expect from this. Looking from the plot summary, it looks like it's going to tie into Sirens of Time in some way, but like I said, we simply don't know. It's also a multi-Doctor story, which, as I've said time and again, I am a huge sucker for. And as a nice touch, this story will also feature Paul McGann, which I think is really nice. He got his start with the main range, and then he eventually moved into the 8th Doctor adventures, where he's still to this day. Yes, I count the box sets as part of the EDAs, but it's nice that they're bringing him back for the final main range adventure. Number 8. The First Doctor Adventures Volume 5. I love David Bradley's First Doctor. Of all the actors to take up the role since Hartnell, he is my favorite. And just in case you're planning to crucify me, second only to William Hartnell is implied. The First Doctor adventure sets are some of my favorite First Doctor content from Big Finish. In my personal assessment of the range, none of these sets or their stories have yet to rank below a 7 out of 10. And Volume 5 looks to be no different. I always go into the First Doctor adventures with very high expectations, and not only has every release met those expectations, they've surpassed them. I never know what to expect from the 1DAs, in the best way possible. And for the glory of Earth, URTH, the sci-fi story in this set, looks to be no different. As for the historical story, the First Doctor is meeting William Shakespeare. I mean, come on, how does that not sound fun? Number 7. The Diary of River Song, Series 8. The Diary of River Song. My personal favorite Doctor Who spinoff. Every year I look forward to these releases. I mean, look at my channel. I've reviewed every release in this series. It's the one thing I make sure I stay up to date on. I really want to know what's going on in Series 8. It seems that, as of Series 6, the entire series has shifted. Instead of these big, overarching plots like the early releases, the Doors series has sort of become an anthology. So instead of those overarching plots, the series now is all single stories connected only by a core premise. For example, in Series 6, all of River's adventures were happening in the background of the Doctor's own adventures. In Series 7, River was going on all sorts of various noir and mystery genre type adventures. Looking at the plot summary, from what I can ascertain, the core premise of Series 8 is River and robots. So Series 8 will feature the Mechanoids, as well as K9 Mark 1, 2, and 3. That'll be fun. But the thing I find I'm most looking forward to is one of my favorite companions is making a comeback in this series. Jane Slavin as Anya Kingdom. Number 6. Return of the Cybermen. This is the other 4th Doctor Lost story. It was originally written for Season 12 by Jerry Davis, half of Jerry Davis and Kit Pedler, the writing team that created the Cybermen and wrote several of their earliest stories, including The 10th Planet and Tomb of the Cybermen. The audio itself will be adapted by John Dorney. Real quick, I did not research the history of this story like I did the Doomsday Contract. If I remember correctly from what little research I did, this story was an earlier draft of what would eventually become the Season 12 finale, Revenge of the Cybermen. And from what little I did look into, Jerry Davis was not happy with the final product. No one was. In fact, while not quite top of the list, Revenge of the Cybermen is infamous as one of the worst stories in the show. And possibly the worst Cyberman story in the show. Yes, even worse than The Timeless Children. Bite me. As I said, this story was really hyped up by Big Finish. Hype that I bought into. Especially with that visual trailer. Did you guys see that? Because along with the 4th Doctor, this story features Harry Sullivan, now played by Christopher Naylor, and Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elizabeth Sladen's daughter, Sadie Miller. And honestly, that's also why I'm kinda hyped for this story. I'm more excited to hear Chris and especially Sadie. And I think this will be a good test run too. If I recall correctly, in the future, and I don't think it will be for a few years, There will be a future release of Fourth Doctor Adventures, and that series will feature the Fourth Doctor and Chris Naylor as Harry. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention I'm kinda nervous. Fourth Doctor's Cybermen stories have a tendency to be not very good. The aforementioned Revenge of the Cybermen, from what I've seen of the 4DAs, The Fate of Krelos, Return to Telos was poorly received, and even though it's never been produced and we've never seen a script, the ideas and concepts we've seen from the Dark Dimension have been universally reviled. But as this was the original draft for Revenge of the Cybermen, I am cautiously optimistic. Number 5. The War Master, Killing Time. This will be Series 6 in Big Finish's War Master spin-off. I have loved almost every release in this series. Series 3 left a lot to be desired. This series is the reason why Sir Derek Jacobi is my favorite Master. From the plot summary, it looks like the Master is up to more of what this Master does best. Going behind the curtain, playing the long game, manipulating people. And this is one of Jacobi's best qualities as the Master. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, but he is capable of being so much more evil than any other version of the Master is capable of being. The other major selling point of this release is Jacobi's co-stars. This series also features Katie Manning as Jo Grant and Sarah Sutton as Nyssa, both of them playing older versions after their travels with the Doctor ended. And both of them companions that the Master has touched personally. Jo, who battled him time and again with the Third Doctor, and Nyssa, who shortly before becoming a companion to the Fifth Doctor, had her entire life destroyed by the Master after he possessed the body of her father. 2 former companions. And the Doctor isn't there to save them from the Master. Number 4. The Third Doctor Adventures, Volume 7. I will say this is kind of what I've wanted from this range ever since Volume 5. I understand why, don't get me wrong, but the 3DAs have been confined to the middle of the Pertwee era, set during and between seasons 9 and 10. Any guesses as to why I don't think, in my personal headcanon, none of them are set during season 8? Volume 7 will touch on parts of the Third Doctor era that the expanded universe just have not touched upon. Kind of. There were actually a couple of short trips released this year, and of course there were some companion chronicles. The 3DA's Volume 7 will be set during the very beginning of the Pertwee era, Season 7, and its very end, Season 11. Of course, this means that instead of Jo Grant, the Third Doctor's companions will be Liz Shaw, once again played by Caroline John's daughter, Daisy Ashford, and Sarah Jane Smith, Sadie Miller. Ooh, 2 Sarah Jane releases, I just realized that. And I didn't want to talk about it with Return of the Cybermen, I wanted to save it for this. Daisy Ashford as Liz Shaw is why I'm looking forward to hearing Sadie as Sarah Jane. Daisy was phenomenal in the 3DA's Volume 5, and I really think this is a great way to do it, respecting the character's legacy and the original actress by having their daughter play the role. And like I just said, it worked out so well previously. It's also going to be interesting to see how separating this release into 2 vastly different seasons is going to affect the format of the Third Doctor Adventures. Like the 1DAs, the David Bradley First Doctor Adventures, doing a sci-fi story and a pure historical, the 3DAs usually tend to do 2 different genres of story from the Third Doctor era. An Earthbound story, usually featuring the extended unit family, and a spacefaring story. Overall, I'm excited to see what this will do and the life it will breathe into releases. Like the Pertwee era, which I do enjoy, don't get me wrong, the 3DAs do have a tendency to get kinda samey. Number 3. Masterful. This one, we've known about this guy since 2019. 2021 marks the 50th anniversary of Jon Pertwee's second season, Season 8. This also means it will be the 50th anniversary of the debut of the Master, and Masterful is Big Finish's celebration of the occasion. There are 2 versions of Masterful available. Pictured here is the limited edition, which I pre-ordered and will be getting. There is also a standard edition available as well, which only comes with the Masterful feature, and none of the additional features will come with it, including the behind-the-scenes featurette, the short trips. There were 2 short trips released previously featuring the Master, and they will be getting a disc release with this set. They are The Switching and I Am the Master. And the standard edition will also not be getting the audiobook. More on that in a sec. Masterful seeks to bring together all of the living incarnations of the Master. Most of the living incarnations of the Master. Because amidst controversy, one actor decided to burn his bridges with Big Finish. We'll also be getting a new Master and some old ones. Masterful stars Jeffrey Beavers, Eric Roberts, Alex McQueen, Mark Gatiss as his Unbound alternate universe Master. And can we please retire the Sam Kisgart joke? Mark Gatiss retired it in the War Master Series 4. Can we please all follow suit? Anyway, Masterful will also star Sir Derek Jacobi and Michelle Gomez. Masterful will also be the Big Finish debut of John Sims' incarnation of the Master, and Milo Parker will be playing a new incarnation. The speculation right now is that he is an adolescent version of the first Master, somewhere between William Hughes and the other guy. Actor and impressionist John Colshaw, who is also currently playing the Brigadier for Big Finish, will also be joining the cast, playing the Anthony Ainley Master. And I'm excited for that. If you haven't heard it yet, he was so good in Lesser Evils. I mentioned that the limited edition also comes with an audiobook. It's called Terror of the Master, and it will also be read by John Colshaw. It doesn't tie into the plot of Masterful, or at least it doesn't seem to. It's another Third Doctor story pitting the Doctor and the Unit family against the Delgado Master. There's just a lot to be excited about with Masterful, and the excitement now has been building up for 2 years. Number 2. I'm actually going to hold off on naming number 2 for a moment. This is one of my weaknesses. I like building up to stuff, much to the annoyance of my friends and family. Number 2 isn't just a single title. It's an entirely new range, with 2 releases slated for 2021. Over the past 2 years, Big Finish has announced a lot of upcoming releases, but a lot of hype and build-up has been aimed at 3 in particular. Masterful was one of them, Return of the Cybermen was another one, and this one. When this announcement was made earlier this summer, people went nuts. And I would wager that for most people, this is probably the number 1 thing they're excited for next year. I also imagine most of you have figured out what it is I'm talking about. And I bet some of you are even shocked and possibly angry that this is not number 1. Number 2. The Ninth Doctor Adventures. Like Windcliff, The Ninth Doctor Adventures has not had a cover reveal yet, so I'm using another promotional image in its place. And yes, we've had the 1DAs, the EAs, the 3DAs, the 4DAs, the EDAs, and now the 9DAs. 15 years after Series 1. Well, it'll be 16 by the time it releases. Christopher Eccleston returns to the role of the Ninth Doctor. I don't even know what we're gonna get. Beyond the initial announcement, we've had no news, no story details, nothing. We don't know what companions he's gonna have, or if it's even gonna be set during Series 1 or before it. But just the fact that Christopher Eccleston, after his tumultuous relationship with the show, is ready to return. I just can't wait. And I wish there was more to say and talk about, but as I said, we haven't really been given anything yet. And number 1, the Big Finish title I'm most looking forward to releasing in 2021 is Master. When I was originally putting this list together, I was shocked. I surprised myself that of everything, this was number 1. But the more I thought about it, yeah, I am really excited for this story. I don't know what the plan is right now, if this is going to be just a one-off or if it's going to spin off into future volumes. But if it is the latter, this will be Big Finish's 3rd spin-off to star the Master, after the War Master and Missy, respectively. And as you can see from the cover here, Master will star Eric Roberts' incarnation. Big Finish has already done tremendous work in redeeming the Roberts Master, who, let's be honest, is generally considered the worst master in the history of the show. I loved his appearance in the Diary of Riversong Series 5, and while I haven't heard it yet myself, I have heard he was also great in Ravenous 4, the conclusion to an 8th Doctor storyline. They've done such a good job with him that I'm eagerly looking forward to seeing more of him. The Master isn't returning alone, though. Joining him is the bounty hunter and assassin Vienna Salvatore, played by Chase Masterson. She originally appeared in the 7th Doctor story, The Shadow Heart, before getting her own spin-off, which I should probably listen to before going into this. If there is anything I am disappointed in, it's that if this is a one-off, it's just a 3-story set. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever, I just prefer the 4-story box sets. And if this is going to be a 3-story set, I do hope this is a continuing series, but at this point, only time will tell. And as an added bonus, Big Finish has shared a behind-the-scenes photo, which seems to show Eric Roberts in the studio with Chase Masterson. And this is really what makes me excited. I feel one of the weaknesses of his story in the Diary of Riversong Series 5 was that Roberts couldn't fly out to the Big Finish studio. So he had to record his stuff independently of the other actors. And in a few of his scenes, you could tell his reading of the scene did not sync up with the way the other actors read it. It wasn't too jarring, it only really happened maybe 2 or 3 times. But I can't wait to see what he pulls off when he gets to play off the other actors. And there you have it, my top 10 most anticipated Big Finish releases of 2021. What are yours? What are you looking forward to? Was there something on the list that you're looking forward to a lot? Was there something not on the list you're looking forward to? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, and in the description box below you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.